Hey everybody, I'm Ian.
And I'm Isabel.
And today we're reviewing Guillermo Del Toro's Pinocchio, which puts a little twist on the traditional Pinocchio tale by taking place in pre-World War II Italy. So, what'd you think?
I thought this was a great movie. I really liked that it kind of catered to older audiences, because if you go from like the Disney movie, it's totally for kids, but this movie had so many messages like having to do with depression and sadness and even, you know, things like drinking and death, that if you were to show this to children, they probably aren't going to understand this fully. And so I think that he did a really good job of kind of intertwining this into a, you know, predominantly child topic, you know what I mean? So I think he did a really good job of intertwining those like adult-like topics into this children's movie.
Yeah, I feel like this is a movie that is definitely catered towards adults, but I still feel like, I don't know, I'm not a little kid, but I still feel like if I like watched this as a little kid, I wouldn't like extremely like it or really get it or anything.
Right.
But I think it's like it's still kind of suitable for kids. Like the animation is just absolutely
Amazing.
Gorgeous, and that's enough to keep a kid sitting there. But I think what really like differentiates this movie is it's really slow pace.
Right.
It was something that kind of turned me off for the first half of the movie. I wasn't really sure if I liked it or not, but I've kind of come around to it. What do you think about the pacing?
I kind of agree with that. I know that it was definitely more thought out than original kids' movies and things like that, because of the way that they're giving context. They're giving context about, you know, Geppetto's past life and, you know, how that leads up to, you know, Pinocchio himself or itself. and so I think that in that way it kind of helped to give the audience more of a connection with Geppetto and, you know, the characters that come along afterwards. But I do agree that it was a little bit slow. Again, not really something that would engage kids as much, probably for older audiences.
Yeah, I mean, we had some like actually great voice acting performances in this, and for me, the standout is Ewan McGregor, but I'm incredibly biased as the cricket.
Sure.
But even the kid who played Pinocchio just absolutely nailed it out of the park. He did such a great job. Especially during like the death scenes when he was talking to Death. I kind of actually really bought his performance, which is crazy. Usually I hate child actors, so I was like really into his performance.
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think it's really interesting to see children playing such complex characters, and you can definitely see it in this movie that, again, they're talking about really complex topics that a lot of children aren't exactly going to understand. And so I think having those conversations really kind of brings that out and shows how, you know, children can kind of have these interesting questions, and this again is explaining it in a way that I think children would probably talk about these things, you know? So I think, again, they did a good job of making that really realistic. And I mean, having actors like Tilda Swinton play Death, I think she did such a great job, and they did a really good job with the casting. I think, you know, she embodied the characters really well, along with the, you know, the wood sprite. And I think they just did a really good job with the casting. And like you said, the child who played Pinocchio did a really good job as well.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't know like anything about this movie going in. It really shocked me that it took place in like 1930s Italy, and it kind of like really enhanced the story for me. Especially like I always hated the Pleasure Island sequence. It was so stupid to me always. Yeah. But to have it take place in like a youth training thing for the Italian army, I thought that was like brilliant. I really liked it. So what do you think of like the different setting for this Pinocchio movie?
I totally agree. I think it's very interesting. I'm really glad that they didn't have it too, and they definitely deviated from the Disney version in that. They had like the freak show or whatever, and I thought that was definitely a bit more realistic, and so I think it definitely added more to the story as well. And I think that it was just, you know, more opportunities to show how children think about, you know, things like war and, you know, death and tragedy.
Okay, so this is one of our Academy nominees for Best Animated Feature. So in terms of the rest of the animated features, where do you think it stands?
Whew. So we have Turning Red, which I think has a pretty good chance of winning because of the fact that it kind of shows diversity in Asian American individuals, and the cast was also amazing for that. We had people like Sandra Oh in that movie, and so I think that one has a pretty good chance of winning. However, I think in terms of meaning, Pinocchio definitely has a better chance of winning, and you know, Guillermo Del Toro is also amazing. And I think the Academy is definitely going to like this movie a lot. And if they don't, well, I don't know what to tell you, but I think this is a great movie. And Puss in Boots was also a hit. I mean, I love Puss in Boots. So it's definitely a hard decision, but I think it definitely has a good chance. I mean, what do you think?
For me, I've seen everything except Turning Red. That includes Sea Beast. For some reason, I saw it. But yeah, for me, coming directly out of Pinocchio, I was like, I don't know. I kind of have to give it to Puss in Boots because that was just such a fun, energetic movie. But after I've sat on Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio for like a week or so, I was like, no, that's definitely the better movie. So my pick for my favorite and what I believe the Academy will pick, I've got to give it to Pinocchio, but we'll just have to wait and see because the Academy loves throwing a curveball every once in a while.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, again, I love the movie. Not too big of a fan of musicals, so I think in that way, this movie did kind of cater to children because they did still have that like music song aspect to it. But I think they still made it work. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I thought the musical obviously caught me off guard because I immediately know, even though I didn't see much about it and didn't know the setting, I did know it was going to be a much more adult take on Pinocchio.
Right.
So I was still shocked to see that it was still like the traditional musical instead of just like a straight story all the way through. I thought the musical numbers were pretty good. They weren't always in your face and there wasn't that many of them, so I wasn't like that offended by the fact that it was a musical, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some great numbers. I love Ewan McGregor's credits song that he kept trying to sing throughout the movie. That was a fine reoccurring bit. I mean, this movie, I guess I wasn't really in the mood to laugh during it. It was kind of like an exhausting viewing experience because of the slow pacing and the heavy subject matter. So like to me, the jokes didn't land that hard, but like I wasn't looking to laugh during this movie.
I totally agree with that. I think this definitely had a different kind of mood to it, and I was actually almost. I'm surprised I didn't cry.
Yeah,
my
me
eyes,
too.
my eyes teared up a little bit, but I did not cry. But yeah, I'm very surprised that it didn't bring me to like full on tears and sobbing because it was kind of a hard movie to watch.
What was your like breaking point? What was your emotional climax of the movie?
Ooh, that's a good question because I think for me it was when they were talking about how dads sometimes say things that they don't mean, and then they realize that they didn't mean it ever at all. And I think I've had those issues with my dad growing up, and I mean, who hasn't? You know what I mean? But I think that kind of hit hard because I was like, oh yeah, like sometimes dads really do say really, really hurtful things. Moms not so much, I don't think, or not as bad as dads, because I think when it comes to moms, it's like, okay, whatever, like my mom said it. But like when your dad says it, it's like with conviction, it's a different kind of conviction. So I think when they kind of mentioned that, I was like, oh, that hit hard.
Yeah, I really loved Geppetto and Pinocchio's like relationship through this movie. I really liked because I feel like I don't know. I saw the Robert Zemeckis one that came out earlier this last year, I guess, and I just like it was just like, okay, I made this wooden boy and he's like my real son. And I really think he's my son, and he's gonna go to school, and I love him. But I love that like this Pinocchio has to actually earn Geppetto's like affection and love because he's not his son and he's not like a direct replacement. That's something both of the characters have to come to terms with, which I think is like really great. And I love that their character arcs are basically like the same thing, but different.
Yeah, the character development here was huge, and I really appreciated it. And I think you're totally right when it comes to Pinocchio having to like earn Geppetto's trust. But with that, what do you rate Pinocchio?
I thought this was an absolute masterclass in animation. It was gorgeous, great voice acting, great soundtrack. The musical numbers were fine. I am going to have to give Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio a 9 out of 10.
That's a great rating. I mean, I think just because of the musical aspect, I think I think the musical numbers were great. I just don't know, like, if we had taken him out, I don't know what we would have been missing. So I think I'm going to give it an 8.5. Because I think it is a really great movie. The cast is amazing. They did cast Kate Blanchett as a monkey, which very confusing, but I think it was an amazing movie. So I'm gonna give it an 8.5 overall.
That was a great rating, and we'll see you next time.